welcome. And to all those watching, welcome. We love you. We miss you. So here we are in week 2 of Faith in an Anxious World. Who was here last week? Yeah? Okay. We're going to do a little bit of a recap, and then we'll do a quick introduction of what this week's going to look at, and then we have another video. If you guys remember the video from last week, I thought it was pretty good. Okay, so last week we talked about anxiety, right, and those anxious feelings. We talked about what might cause them. We broke into groups, and we had a piece of paper where we were looking at the different things that might cause you anxiety, and we had to pick our top 3, and there were things like school and friends and maybe moving or the death of a family member or natural disasters or friendships, and there was a whole list. So we were going over the things that cause us stress, anxiety. And also about those feelings that we get, because not everybody has the same feelings when they get anxiety, right? Sometimes you can get a headache, sometimes you can get like those butterflies in your tummy, or you find it hard to breathe, or all kinds of different symptoms are out there. So we talked about that. We also talked about how you're not alone, right? And that has 3 different aspects to it. You're not alone because everybody experiences anxiety. You're not the only one, but the enemy will make you think that you're the only one that's going through it. You are not alone because you have God on your side, right? You have God in your boat. We were talking about Jesus is in the boat with you last week, and he's in your life, and he's right there with you to help you through anything. And you're also not alone because you have people in your circle who love you. You have parents, you have other adults, you have people in the church, you have your youth leaders, right? You have lots of people in your group that are with you, so you're not alone, okay? All right. The trick is to try to figure out how to deal with your anxiety and not to let it get the best of you. So we had talked a little bit about some things that you could do, whether you need to just go by yourself for a little bit and calm down. Maybe that involves talking to God, or maybe it involves talking with somebody in your life to help you work through things, or maybe breathing exercises or things like that so that it doesn't get the best of you. Okay. Remember who's with you. God is with us. Jesus is with us. Okay. There also is something underneath your chair, and if you want to grab that real quick, get my thing going here. So, Faith in an Anxious World. Okay. This is something that this lesson is teaching every single week, and I have a lot of pretty paper, so I was playing with paper. This is called the Daily Replay, and this is something that will help with your anxiety, and it's something that maybe at the end of the day or every couple of days or maybe at the end of the week, you want to just take 5 minutes, pull yourself away, and see if you can answer these questions and go over them in your head, talk to God about it. Become aware of God's presence, okay? What has God been at work in your life this week? Where has he been working, okay? And review with gratitude. Whose friendship or expressions of love are you thankful for? Okay? Pay attention to your emotions. What conversations or moments with others have been emotionally charged this week? And just think about that, okay? Forgive and ask for forgiveness. Where can I make the first move towards creating peace? Okay? And look towards tomorrow. What interactions with others can I picture going differently tomorrow so that you don't get in the habit of doing the same thing over and over and over? How can you change maybe what happened so that it doesn't happen again? Okay, so this is for you to take home and just use, okay? All right. Let's see. Okay. Look inside and ask, where is God working in me? Okay. This is kind of what we're going to look at today is relationships. Okay. When we start to feel anxious, we can look inside and we can reflect on where God is at work in us. Okay. What is my anxiety trying to tell me about your friendships, about your family, about relationships that you have? What is your anxiety trying to tell you? And we looked a little bit at this last week. You know, maybe your schedule's too busy, or maybe there's something going on in your family that's causing stress. Okay? See if you can pinpoint what it is. Okay. Grow your circle. Okay. Talk to people in your life, parents, youth leaders, other people who are like family to you, and see how other people deal with their anxiety. Okay. Did Jesus do life alone? Absolutely not. He didn't. He surrounded himself with disciples and friends, and he prayed to God all the time, right? So God doesn't want us to go through stress and anxiety and anything alone, okay? All right, let's watch the video now.
I think my family was just, they were always there for me.
I think my parents.
I mean, I would just go to my closest friends.
Youth leader or my mentor.
Humans were made to live in relationship with one another. We live in families, hang out with friends. We learn best from other people. Relationships can help calm us down, make us feel safe, and help us when anxious feelings start to make us feel stuck.
I think definitely my mother. She went through a lot of the same things I did. What she says to me about that really helps.
My grandmother is very, very supportive when it comes to school or how to deal with my stress.
I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters, so I usually talk about the problem with my brothers and sisters. Yeah, so sometimes when I do have to get stuff done, and everybody's coming into my room, my mom's telling me to wash the dishes, my brother's telling me to play games with them, I'm like, can you please leave me alone? I'm trying to get this stuff done.
You'll start to realize, parents aren't perfect. They're not always gonna know what to do.
Like, for example, if my mom would try to fix something for me, she would then get anxious. And then it was like, this isn't helping anyone.
I grew up in a family where it was like, you do what you do because you have to do it. You didn't cry about it. But I think one thing I always knew was I always had a rock. My mom was always there.
When I was in high school, my parents were actually going through a divorce. So just going through that while also trying to focus on my own things.
My family, they definitely live up to that older generation stereotype of you don't talk about generically mental health issues or at a basic level emotions that you're feeling. To their credit is that there's a silent love that they commit to. I'm thinking about all the times that my father would wake up in the morning or make the time available to get me to places, let me do my things, so to speak.
I come from a Latin American family, and so going away for college was not our custom. And I wanted to do what all my friends were doing, so my anxiety also just had a cultural piece to it. Did I want to be my own person and do what my friends were doing, or did I want to honor what was my family's idea of what you should do after high school? And I applied to schools out of state and then ended up actually staying home. My dad always made himself available, so if I was having a really overwhelming day, just his paying attention to what was happening was really helpful.
Definitely, there are times where you go to them and either it's because they're too busy or whatever, and you tell them and they just give you nothing. They are a resource, but when they fail you, which sometimes they do, you have to just follow through to another resource that you have.
I think counselors and teachers really help. Sometimes you won't have the best counselor or teacher, but you will find one that you can really open up to.
The people you're comfortable with, the people whose opinions you respect and honor.
My mom's friends, they were very helpful too. And then just like my closest friends, even their parents sometimes would help too.
There's definitely the individuals who would come help lead like youth group ministry stuff or tutoring, like most of those young adults, because I went to a Korean American church, happen to be also Korean Americans, and so having people you can relate to helps.
My youth leaders specifically were the second parents that I had and could go to and just ask for prayer or ask for help or just vent. So having relationships with adults outside my family were really helpful to help me navigate my anxious times in high school.
Anybody find anything in there that they could relate to? They're like, oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Okay. I thought that was really good. Well, today's topic is about relationships. Okay, let's see. Life in a relational world. Okay. So the heart of this week's session is relationships. We all need people in our lives. But people can be hard to deal with sometimes, yes? Mm-hmm. And especially for you guys, it's usually the people who are the closest to you, like your family or your friends, that can cause you the most stress, right? There are also, your friends and your family can be the source of stress, but they can also be your support system, so that makes it difficult as well. The family forms an emotional unit. So your emotions and your feelings and your behaviors aren't just yours independently, okay? They're deeply connected to your family and their behaviors and attitudes. It's all learned, right? When you're little and you're growing up and you watch how Mom and Dad deal with stress, or you watch how school teachers deal with stress, and you're watching, and that's how you're learning, is you're just watching, and then you imitate what you see. So sometimes those ways of dealing with stress aren't good ways. Okay. Relationships can be frustrating at times, but God designed us to be part of groups and families. We're supposed to be together. We're supposed to have communion and relationships with people, not to be by ourselves, right? And God wants us to have a circle of people who care about us and who support us and who are there for us. And that just doesn't need to look like your family. It can be a bigger group, people you can rely on, just like your youth leaders. And I keep harping on this because you guys were here for you, okay? Anytime, all the time. We love to hear about the good things and the bad things. We love to be able to pray for you. So don't be afraid to reach out if you need us. Okay. Who's on your team? Okay. Culture, technology, academic achievement, competition, self-comparison, all of these things add to the pressure that builds around us and then what's inside of us. Okay? Anxiety exists to tell us something important. Okay? It might be telling us that something's wrong or that we're in danger. It might be telling us that there's something going on with our bodies or our relationships or about maybe your basic needs like food or sleep. Okay? The key is that we listen by asking ourselves 2 questions. Where is God at work in the midst of your anxiety? Okay? And what might God or anxiety be trying to tell you? So that's going to mean you're going to need to stop what you're doing and you're going to need to take a step back. Because a lot of times I find that when I'm stressed and I've got a problem, that I get narrowed in, right? And all I can see is that one problem right in front of me, and I can't see anything else. And I'm focused on that one thing, and this is really bad. But if you take a step back, right, and you open up that circle, and you talk to God about it, you're going to get a different perspective. And especially if you can go to somebody and talk to them, bring somebody in to help you work through it, a lot of times you can see that way through it, okay? We're going to talk about families and in the impact that they can have on how we feel, okay? What's the last thing any of you argued or disagreed about with someone at home or maybe at school? What's something you guys, one of the last things you guys argued about? Claire? She was mad. She was. Okay. Yeah. You could see how she would be mad about that. Well, just brush your teeth again, right? Anybody else? Has anybody else argued with anybody over anything recently? That wasn't a pretty heavy-duty argument, was it? No. And a lot of times it's little things. How about when you're at your desk and you got a huge test that you're trying to study for and your siblings come in and bug you, and then you're like, it's time for dinner, you need to come down and eat right now, I don't care what you're doing, right? Or then next is, well, you need to take the trash out or whatever those chores are, and you're just like, leave me alone, right? Okay. So just between us, let's admit something, okay? Families can be annoying sometimes. Yes? We all agree on that? And actually, if we're telling the truth, people can be annoying sometimes. Yeah? Okay, what are some things that annoy you? I dislike when people don't use their directional signals in their car. That raises my blood pressure, and it's something I got to work on, but that annoys me. How about you? What annoys you? Aha, when people don't clean up after themselves and the bathroom was used, yes.
Improper grammar, or like using the wrong there.
Yeah. Elena?
Are you supposed to be somewhere on time with people at your house that are there?
And you can't get yourself there on time because you can't. Josh.
In the same vein as her, trying to get somewhere and someone's going 15 and a 30.
Yeah, not going the speed limit, going way too slow. Amelia.
When you're trying to talk, but someone keeps interrupting your
What are you talking about?
Interruptions, yes.
Saying it over and over again, and they interrupt and they just keep going.
Yep. Yeah.
When you're running like something and you type every red letter, you're stuck behind a bus.
Oh yeah, I don't like those buses. Yeah.
When a sibling comes in your room and you ask them to shut the door, and they just walk out. They shut it only like this much of the door. When my siblings had the TV on so loud and I'm in this room, and they had like blasting and I can't hear anything.
Not thinking of others, right? Yes. So there's a lot of things that can be annoying. All right. Let's see. We're going to take a look at Luke chapter 5, and we're going to read the story about Jesus when he first meets some of his disciples. Okay? So this is the first part of it, and I know that's kind of little, so if you just want to listen. One day, Jesus was standing beside Lake Gennesaret when the crowd pressed in around him to hear God's word. Jesus saw 2 boats sitting by the lake. The fishermen had gone ashore and were washing their nets. Jesus boarded one of the boats, the one that belonged to Simon. Simon has another name. Does anybody know? Peter. So we're talking about Peter here. Then asked him, so Jesus asked him to row out a little distance from the shore. Remember, this is before he had called any of his disciples, so they didn't know each other. Jesus sat down and taught the crowd from the boat. Now, more people can see him. He's out farther, right? When he finished speaking to the crowds, he said to Simon, or Peter, "Row out a little farther into the deep water and drop your nets for a catch." Okay? Simon replied, "Master, we've worked hard all night and caught nothing. But because you say so, I'll drop the nets." So they dropped the nets, and their catch was so huge that their nets were splitting. They signaled for their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They filled both boats, so full that they were about to sink. When Simon Peter saw the catch, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Leave me, Lord, for I am a sinner." Peter and those with him were overcome with amazement because of the number of fish they caught. James and John, Zebedee's sons, were Simon's partners, and they were amazed too. Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will be fishing for people." As soon as they brought the boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him, Jesus. That's pretty amazing. So we're going to take this and we're going to break it apart and look at it a little bit, okay? Last week, we also talked about Jesus and a boat, right? That was a story about how they had finished teaching, and Jesus said, "Well, you guys head out to the other side. I'm going to go pray, and I'll catch up with you." So there was a storm, and they thought that they were going to drown. And who comes? Right? Jesus comes walking on the water towards them. And his plan was just to keep going and pass by him. But he got into the boat with them, and he calmed the storm, and he calmed the disciples. He got in the boat with them, right? Jesus didn't leave the disciples alone in their anxiety. He joined them, and he journeyed with them in that anxious situation. So in the beginning of this story, we see that Jesus is doing just fine on his own, right? He doesn't have any disciples yet. And he must have been teaching for a while because it's saying that there's a large crowd there. So his reputation is starting to precede him, you know. So when he travels around, people have heard and they want to come here and see what he's going to teach about. He's traveling, he's teaching, and he's gathering large crowds. But then the story gets interesting in verse 3 when it says that Jesus jumps into Simon's boat. Okay, he doesn't know Simon, and steps behind the wheel, right? He gets into that boat. He's almost kind of like taking over. "Hey, can I borrow your boat? Can you take me out a little ways so I can teach to these people?" And in this story, Simon or Peter, he's okay with it. Does anybody have a friend like Simon, the type who's always seems to be easygoing and happy to come along for the ride? Does anybody have a friend like that? Just super easygoing? No? Yeah? Okay. And then in verse 4, Jesus starts handing out advice, right? Now, perhaps Simon's not so sure, right? Simon, or Peter, he's been a fisherman his whole life, right? So he's probably been taught by his parents and his grandparents and other people in the village. So they've learned this trade and they've been doing things the same way for a long time. So on the other hand, here's Jesus. He's not a fisherman, is he? No. He's a rabbi. He's a teacher. He's a religious teacher. So let's look at it this way. What if all of a sudden Pastor Jeff came up to you and tried to show you and teach you how to use Snapchat or TikTok or how to do your Common Core math, right? It might be a little funny or it might be a little annoying, right? But some really important things are happening here when Simon decides to take Jesus' advice, okay? The first important thing that happens is what? What's the first miracle here that happens? He says, take the boat out and throw your net in. What happened? Simon had just got done telling him, we were out fishing all night and we didn't catch one thing. What happened? A lot of fish. More fish to fit in one boat, right? Because they had to call the other boat over, and they filled both boats overflowing to the point where they were starting to sink. That's pretty miraculous. But what happens after that might be just an even bigger miracle, okay? Simon calls his partners in the other boat who respond, and they come to help out. Simon's boat starts to become wobbly and unstable. And Simon starts to get anxious. In fact, he gets so anxious that he gets inside his own head. And what does he do? He's not thinking about the boat or anybody else's safety. He's thinking about his own failures. He feels exposed. And he starts to push Jesus away, right? Just like you might do when you feel anxiety or anxious. You want to push people away and get away. Leave me, Lord, for I am a sinner. Do you guys feel that way? When you get really worked up and upset about something that you want to be alone? Or maybe like Simon, when you're standing in front of someone else who thinks that in your eyes that they're perfect and they've got their life together, that it just makes you feel more inadequate. You focus on your own failures and your mistakes. Like somehow their perfection just magnifies your imperfection. But Jesus says two things to Simon in verse 10. He says, don't be afraid. And from now on, you will fish for people. Okay? Jesus does not leave Simon alone in his fear and anxiety. Okay? He reassures Simon, and then he reconnects Simon, both with himself and with the other people there. Okay? Let's see. Jesus reassures Simon, and Jesus reconnects to Simon. There's something new happening right here in this moment. Jesus is forming a circle of people for his work. But he's also connecting a circle of people for each other, okay? So when the story began, Peter and his friends were fishing, a trade that had been taught to them by their families and villages, and they were probably using tricks and habits that had been passed down from generations. It was a cultural thing. But the problem was nobody was catching anything. The way we've always done it wasn't working. When Jesus calls out, it isn't just to give them fishing advice. He's not saying, well, this is how we do it in the next village over. Jesus is giving Peter a new vision for how Jesus and what will one day become the church. We're going to work together. Okay? Jesus is forming a circle of people for Peter to take on a journey of a new identity, a new way of interacting, and new perspectives on old traditions. You can see throughout the gospel and the book of Acts that this circle grows and grows to become what our church is. Okay. Who's in your circle? People we love most can really get under our skin, and sometimes we might get frustrated when they want us to do things the way they've always done it, or relate to them the way they did when we were younger. But when the boat starts to wobble and everything tells us to push others away, that's when Jesus offers us another way. Instead of pushing or pulling away, we can reach out and connect. Okay? Just a quick story. Growing up, my mom, how she used to deal with her stress and issues is she would explode, yell and scream like you have not seen. And that was my brother and I's cue to get out of the house. Good luck, Dad. It's all on you. And over the years, she came to realize that that's not normal. That's not okay. So she went and got counseling and got help and, figured out what was causing all that. And I'm so grateful that she did, because then I was able to see that that wasn't the way that you're supposed to deal with anxiety. And so from then on, I was able to see how she dealt with it, and that was a good example for me to learn to see what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And we have a very strong relationship now, and I'm just so grateful that she took that extra step to get help for herself and the family so that we could get through all that. So occasionally in life, we come across people, even in our families, whose words and actions can be harmful. And instead they're not helpful at all. It's important to know that if we ever find ourselves in a dangerous situation, that we need to get help, okay? God wants us to reach out for help, and what's more, God wants us to know that there's hope that we can experience when we are cared for and supported by community, okay? So any difficult situation that you come across, don't withdraw, reach out, find somebody you can talk to, okay? We are designed to be connected. God created us to have relationships. Okay? All right. So, look up, look inside, and look around. When we look up, we can pause in the midst of our anxious thoughts to seek God's friendship through the Bible and by talking with others who are walking in faith. When we look inside, we can reflect on where God is at work in us. And when we look around, we can take a good look at our own anxious world so that we deepen the relationships that help us navigate it. Okay? All right. Who has God already put in your circle? Okay? Well, we've been talking about this. I'm hoping you've been thinking about, oh, yeah, well, I could talk to Mom, or I could talk to Dad, or there's a teacher at school who I've really connected with, or there's a family member, or somebody who's like family that you could talk to. If you guys grab that sheet on the floor real quick, okay? This is something you don't have to do. but I would suggest that you do it. It wants you to find that person to talk to, how that other person that's in your life that helps you through things, that you see handles anxiety in a good way, that you sit down with them for 10, 15 minutes and there's questions on there that can help you through this little conversation just to find out ways how they deal with their anxiety and stress. And maybe you can talk to them about things that are upset and worrying you. But it's helpful to get other perspectives from just what you've grown up with, just so you can see there's different ways to deal with things, okay? Relationships take practice, but it's up to you to take the first step and connect with somebody, okay? What we're gonna do now is we're gonna break up into groups real quick like we did before, and if we just wanna do like the girls over here, and I know there's only 3 guys, but if the 3 guys wanted to go over on this side, and then Jordan and Taylor can go that way, and Becky and I, and we'll just go over a couple more questions real quick, okay? For those of you at home, what we did is we broke out into groups and we were just talking about questions, about things that make us feel anxious, and what you could do when you get home or later in the week is find somebody who deals with stress really well and ask them what their techniques are so that maybe you could try using those in your moments of anxiety, okay? We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.